Hey, welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn where I post more content. The website, as always, is dsmsports.net, and you can find every podcast on your preferred podcast platform, including YouTube now. Depending on when you're listening to this, or really no matter when you're listening to this, the Super Bowl is over. Football is done until the fall, although the UFL is going to make its debut soon. And it is now almost time for baseball season. Pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training, and baseball season, MLB, will be back before we know it. And my guest on the podcast today is very timely for that matter. He is Kyle Payne, Senior Manager of Social Media and Content for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Just a tremendous chat this was with Kyle. Of course, Diamondbacks made a great run to the World Series last year before ultimately falling to the Texas Rangers. But a tremendous conversation talking about the Diamondbacks' run to the World Series, how they really did a great job of conveying their brand throughout, especially through their video content. There's such great alignment between social and voice and the video production team, and we get into that with Kyle. We also talk about the brand personality itself and things they do, chances they take, calculated risks, but also staying true and authentic to themselves and the voices behind that platform and behind that content. And also just lots of good advice and insights from Kyle about what success means on social, the things that he looks for as well, and his team. Just lots of good stuff coming up. So here he is, Kyle Payne of the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm back with today's guest, and I'm so excited to be talking to him. He is coming off a hell of a season for his team, did a great job on the social media channels. My guest on the podcast today is Kyle Payne. He is Senior Manager of Social Media and Content for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Welcome to the podcast today, Kyle.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for the intro. Really honored to be invited to speak with you and chat about all things social media, Arizona Diamondbacks, and whatever else you have on tap for us today.
Hell yeah. We're going to have some fun today. I am a baseball fan first and foremost. So you combine baseball with social, and I am all about it. Even though you are with the D-backs, I'm a Padres fan, so we'll let that slide for another day.
Yeah, we can look past that one for now. I think we can look at the record from last year, and it'll speak for itself.
Oh, gosh. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, Kyle, tell us about you. Tell us about your career path, your stops along the way, and what you're doing today. Any tips for folks that want to try to do what you do?
Yeah, so I am originally from California, grew up, born and raised in San Jose, and wanted to work in sports, or I wanted to play sports, as I'm sure most kids, that's where you dream of. And as someone that's only 5'6", that path got cut short, literally and figuratively, pretty early in life. So I knew I wanted to still be in sports in some way, shape, or form. So I came out to ASU. Excited to join the journalism program there and potentially write about, my favorite sport is baseball. That was the goal. I started out actually doing PR internships at the encouragement of my parents. My dad has a career in marketing, and my mom also spent some time doing some marketing PR stuff. So they were trying to keep my mind open, and I actually found that I really liked kind of the PR communication side of the industry. So I did some writing internships with Arizona Republic, with Arizona Sports, which is the website for the Arizona Sports 98.7 radio station, which had all the major sports teams. And I liked the writing, but it wasn't necessarily, I think, where I was finding my passion or my strong suits. And it all kind of changed for me when I took a class my junior year at Arizona State called Strategic Sports Communication. And it was taught by our former senior vice president of content communications for the Arizona Diamondbacks, Josh Rawich. Yeah. And Josh is now the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame. But he was my teacher, and I really wanted to work for the Diamondbacks. So I bugged him literally after class every single week about how to get an internship. And sure enough, I ended up having interviews for a handful of them for the 2014 season. And I got hired to be the social media intern. Honestly, at that point, I didn't even really know what that was going to consist of. It was a new internship for them. It was moving departments. The social media person before, whose name's John Pruitt, who I know some people are very familiar with. He was the OG for us. He had moved from marketing and communications the off season before I started. So it was a real new space for us, which ended up being the perfect landing spot for me. I really didn't know what to expect, but I got exposed to so much and really fell in love with working on the sports side of things, and found myself actually kind of in love with social media as well. I think a little bit unrequited at first, where I was trying to maybe still find my way into PR, find my way into baseball operations, because who doesn't want to be their own GM, and make the calls for a team. but they hired me back on full time in social media in 2015, and I've been in this role pretty much ever since.
Mhm.
Been lucky enough to ascend to my current role through various different stages as my roles and then social media in general has evolved.
Mhm.
So yeah, now I'm here still. I'll be entering my 11th season with the Arizona Diamondbacks in about a month. It's been pretty crazy. We've got, a few people on the team now. We still are in the content communications group. But yeah, it's been really exciting. And honestly, it can all just attribute back to, that initial love of baseball and wanting to be involved in some way, shape, or form. And then that, yeah, fateful class at ASU and some persistence. And here I am.
That is so cool. You'll have to go visit Cooperstown one of these days and hang out with Josh and go around the museum. That's a really cool connection there. And kudos to you for being dogged and going to him and bugging him. Like you're not going to the office hours to complain about your grade, but just going to bug him. Hey, can you hire me?
Yeah, I think that was a large part when I've asked him in the past, like, hey, why did you kind of help me out or push me forward? Because he ended up being my direct boss for a while as well. And he kind of just went back to, he's like, I appreciated that you kept after it. And I paid attention in class. I worked hard. I got good. I did get a good grade in his class because I cared and I wanted to make a good impression. And our coordinator, Steven, he had Josh's class a couple years after I did, and it was something similar where he
Yeah.
did well in the class. Josh vouched for him for our internship, and now he's working for us later as a full-time employee. So I do think there's a lot that comes from you when you have an opportunity, you got to make the most of it.
So that's why a lot of these sports people are adjunct professors. It's a recruiting ground for them.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't have that anymore. He's left us, so I'm like, how are we going to hire interns? But we actually hired an intern this year partially because of a recommendation from someone else in the industry that they vouched for them, and that's how it's not necessarily like who to the cliche of it, but it does matter to some degree, like how much you impress the people that do know who you are, and
Yeah.
making sure that when someone reaches out to them to ask for a referral or an endorsement, that they speak highly of you.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, of course, you coming up in the PR side, the comm side a little bit when you were first coming up. I'm sure you hone your writing skills and storytelling skills, and also I'm just thinking about the fact that you're of a generation. You're a bit younger than me, but you probably maybe you knew what a dumb phone was, but for the most part, you grew up with a smartphone. As you grew up with this camera in your pocket, this video camera in your pocket, and it certainly has evolved in your decade plus with the D-backs, of course, as well. But how did you sort of approach this idea of, okay, I learned writing. Maybe I'm not going to do comms and PR full time, but now what are those skills that you have to in order to come up in the social media space? Like, did you have to sort of say, okay, yeah, I can take a basic video on my phone, but now I got to figure out, I have to figure out how to edit really quickly in iMovie or in CapCut or whatever or in Adobe Premiere. Like, were there skills that you realized as you came up that whether by necessity or baptism by fire that, hey, I know the storytelling stuff, I know the writing stuff, but there are these other things I need to be able to learn in order to succeed in social media.
Definitely. And writing was for sure my calling card early on. That was, I think, my strength. I was a strong communicator. Hopefully considered that. And writing is still, I think, such an important part, even if it's not the length. And I was just talking to someone, I think, yesterday about how, most successful writers will say that the hardest thing to do is actually write succinctly and not write long, eloquent prose. And so I think that's social media to a T, right? It is, I think, way harder to write a captivating one sentence caption than it was for me to write, a 500-word game recap about a high school football game. To try to tell all the story and the emotion of your team going to the World Series for the first time in 20 years. Like, you want to say so much, but you have to keep it so simple, so short on social media. So that was, I do think I had a skill in training and writing, but even then it was very different. And I remember my old boss, John, was really key on helping me kind of hone in on the very short, succinct, catchy, eye popping captions and things like that play well on social media. And then beyond that, I mean, there's so much I think that social media kind of entails. I think really curiosity is just always big. That's the number one thing that I think will make people successful, is being curious and trying to learn and trying to grow their skill set. I didn't really have Photoshop experience, but I would spend some of my free time, if I had any in the office, like trying to watch Photoshop tutorials or ask our designers for help. So I think that was a huge part of trying to come up and learn in social media was, okay, yeah, like how do you utilize your iPhone? What are you learning about? What are the new features they're
Yeah.
bringing to the next one? And how do you utilize your camera better and all those things? And then I think for me, the other one, and this is especially as I think I've gotten maybe more away from like the day to day and a little bit more into the strategy. And as more and more resources from organizations are being poured into social media, I'm a firm believer that I don't really necessarily need to be as active of a content creator, and my job should be more about how to help people collaborate together. Like, I want to be able to bring in our video producers with our graphic designers, with a photographer, with someone who can write copy that's on our social team, and really help kind of put all of those pieces together to create really, successful social media campaigns, but that could also work for TV, that could also work for in ballpark.
Yeah.
I think that is where as I, kind of continue to grow, hopefully in social media or in sports or in creative work in general, I think good social media people are good like glue people. Like they bring other areas together and kind of hopefully accentuate all the, skill sets of a trained photographer, of a trained graphic designer, of a trained videographer, and kind of help elevate all the work that they do.
Yeah, there's something to that too of like the fact that the social media person, I recognized early on in my own career that pretty much the social media person has to have their finger on the pulse of everything going on in the organization because it touches everything. You have to know what's CR up to, what's fan development doing, like what are we doing with the sponsorship campaign, like how about this group, what about group sales, what about ticket sales, what about game presentation, like everything ultimately kind of touches you guys a little bit, and so that gives you some good insight into what's going on and to really be a dot connector. And I like the way you put it, sort of being that glue guy, so to speak, a little bit, and having to connect those dots for folks.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things I remember my internship that I was so grateful for was I had my friends that were doing other internships in organizations, not to downplay the quality of those internships, but I remember walking away feeling like I knew everyone in the building, whereas they were saying they really only knew people in their department.
Yeah.
That was really who they worked with. Whereas I was, even as an intern, working with community, working with ticket sales, working with marketing. And that I think just gave me a way better platform for success later on that I had all this exposure. And, as someone who does have aspirations to continue to grow and be a leader in an organization, to be able to have the access to learn about what all these other areas do and figure out what makes them successful and how we can play a role in it. I think that's one of the coolest parts about social media that I try not to take for granted.
And what is that sort of not gatekeeping, but that balance between the social channels and other channels? Like, not everything needs to be on social, but you certainly do know a lot of what's going on out there. And what's that decision tree like of like, okay, we have this thing that's going up, that's going to be part of the game presentation. How do we just repurpose it on social, like a straight copy and paste almost? Do we create a social version, or other way around as well? Hey, we're creating this social content series for TikTok or for Instagram, or YouTube. Like, what does it look like for broadcast? What does it look like for in-game? Do we put this on the website? Like, what's that balance like? Are there some things that are social only, and what kind of like makes that social only versus like coming from other places of, okay, we're gonna repurpose this and maybe reskin it or not reskin it, and it goes everywhere wherever we touch fans.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the things that we're really trying to figure out right now is how do you repurpose something and get the most out of it without it not necessarily being suited to the platform or suited to the environment it's in. And the kind of metaphor that just came to mind is I've heard in like the NFL that like a special teams coordinator is like a good kind of gateway or like path to becoming a head coach or something like that because you learn certain things that then actually help make you successful down the road. And I feel like, and this is probably a little bit of, my own ego to some degree, but I do think social media people have that unique viewpoint that will hopefully down the road, when we talk about this 5, 10, 15 years from now, I think you'll actually see a lot of social media people in higher up kind of marketing, branding,
Yeah.
creative roles, because I do think they'll have a really good pulse on what works on different things. I think every social media manager's struggle is trying to like make other departments and areas of the organization happy and successful while also protecting the account. And I think it was something that until I got to the kind of manager higher role of being the kind of the most senior person on the social team, for me to understand that kind of feeling of being protective over an account,
Yeah.
because it's hard that it's not my account, right? It really isn't. It's the team's account. And I'm big on it's really not my voice. It's not Steven's voice. It's not anyone's. It's the Diamondback's voice and it's the
Mhm.
Diamondback's account. But as kind of the person that's ultimately responsible for the success of it, there is a certain amount of protection and arm's lengthening of it that you can have sometimes. And I think it's a feeling you almost have to fight against yourself of, okay, why am I pushing it back against this? What is the actual pros and cons and benefits and drawbacks of putting out a job posting for another department on social media versus, is it really that big of a deal to maybe highlight a community initiative? And so I think that's probably an ongoing question that we're constantly trying to answer. And I don't know if there is a right or a wrong. I think for us, our main focus is just trying to highlight the opportunities in front of us. We just had a meeting about, like we actually have a great product, an awesome team that just went to the World Series with likable players and cool new uniforms. Like we have something that people want. Like let's just showcase that. Like not overcomplicate it. And we have really talented creative people. It's like they're gonna do really creative, good things. Let's just get it out there so as many people as possible can enjoy it. So that whether that's on social media, whether that's in the ballpark, whether that's on TV, whether that's in an email blast, like let's just highlight the really cool things that we do and let people see it. And I think that'll bring people to, continue their brand affinity for us. Hopefully draw some new people in that go, wow, like the D-backs are doing some really sick stuff. I
Yeah.
want to pay more attention to them. And yeah, beyond that, I think it's just a guessing game. You kind of just have to keep waiting and seeing how things respond and how they do and just keep learning and adjusting from there.
Yeah, I mean, and hell, like some of the best ROI of social is not tangible. It's really driving that affinity, as you said, and driving that fan love, so that when they do encounter you in other places, they are like looking to do X, Y, and Z. They already have that like positive feeling and vibes around the D-backs, and I think another way of I always like to think about it as well is when someone comes to you and is like, "Hey, can you please post this for me?" Or it's almost like they're asking you to do them a favor, and it shouldn't be the case. It's not like yes or no. I'm the steward. I'm this gatekeeper of this platform. If you say yeah, I think this is a great thing to post, or if you say no, I don't think this is right for that channel, it's not because you're saying I don't like this person, or I'm not willing to do you a favor. It's not that's not the way it should be framed. It's like, is this a good thing? Hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Help us accomplish this the best way possible. It's not, hey, I have this thing that I need you to post about. So it's really like it. What's best for the channel. That at the end of the day, what's best for the organization. And so it's like you have to have that trust factor that we're all on the same team. We're all trying to accomplish this, the same overarching goals at least. And so it's not a matter of like, no, I'm not posting that, or like I'm not doing you a favor. And it's a wrong way to look at it in my mind.
Yeah, I think the first question I usually try to ask when someone comes to that, it's like, what's the objective of this? What are we trying to get from it? Hey, we want to launch an Instagram account for this. Okay, like it's not that it's a yes or a no, but like, what's the objective here and what's the goal? And if we talk through it and we agree, yeah, like social media is the place for this, or another Instagram account is right, or a series of posts is right for this, then like we're all on board to do it.
Mhm.
I think it's having the conversations and understanding how it's going to be measured as success for that person, for that department, and making, because I also want to make sure that at the end of the day, if we do it, they're not like, well, that wasn't what I wanted, or we didn't end up having any like leads from that or something like that, because we just said yes and just kind of executed how they maybe just thought would be the easiest way to get it across.
Right.
So that's kind of the approach I try to take, and it's tough sometimes because yeah, everyone's got different organizational priorities and they've got their own things that they're trying to achieve for their success in their role. So it can be a little bit, I think, on the trickier side, but as long as there's that collaboration and the kind of open-mindedness, which I think is something that I constantly have to work on still, is just okay, like what could I might be missing something and maybe it is worth giving it another shot, even if we've tried it a few years ago, because there might really be a great opportunity here that I might not see. It's just trying to identify for that person, from that department, whatever it is. All right, what would be a success for you and how can we make that happen?
Yeah. And I'm sure going into the season and even week to week, however you guys break it up or homestand to homestand, there are things that are slotted in, like, oh yeah, we're gonna hit this around this time. That's when the best time is for it. But like, how does that come into play then with the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of this team's performance? Like, are there like times when you're like, okay, shit, we're on a 3-game winning streak. This is now's our time. Like now is the time to to promote this whatever new group offer that's coming out in a couple months, or just to do the season ticket sweepstakes or whatever it might be. That now we're actually gonna get some leeway with it. Like, do you kind of have to look for those moments to capitalize, because in a long baseball season and through the ups and downs of a team as well, because you guys haven't been a World Series team up until this year, like, do you have to take advantage of those moments to capitalize and say, okay, now's our time to throw stuff out there?
Absolutely. And I think because I've only really ever had this career in baseball social media, if anything, I probably still, yeah, need to like work on the non-flow side of social media and that real like content calendar planning where things are firm. And I think, a lot of my counterparts in other industries, might be able to really plan things out. I feel like I've only really learned the kind of style of you have to feel how things are going. And especially with the baseball season, which is 162 games, you're going to have win streaks, you're going to have losing streaks, and you're going to have good homestands, bad homestands, road trips, all these things that I feel like you have to really kind of learn when and how to capitalize when things are good, and learning how to either make the best out of a bad situation. I mean, we've had some really rough seasons while I've been here. And so I think that teaches you just as much about, when and how to message certain things to fans
Mhm.
as a winning season does. I mean, absolutely right now, I feel like we have a lot more cachet with Arizona to kind of tell
Oh
them
yeah.
what's going to happen. And when we have promotional items, I think it's like, yeah, people want to see that stuff. It's not trying to like beat a dead horse where, if you have a product that people aren't interested in, it can feel like you're talking to no one, you're talking to a wall.
Mhm.
Whereas right now, people want to really hear about what we have to offer. So it's constantly that kind of just like finger to the wind, seeing how which way it's blowing, and then trying to pivot a little bit. Um, and then it's also identifying platforms, right? Like which one might be more receptive to this sort of thing. But I think where I would like to continue try to develop and get us is really on that kind of more rigid side of like, okay, like we know that this, is going to be a big game no matter what. So like, regardless of how things are going, how do we make sure that this doesn't miss for us? Like it's important to the organization that opening day, right? Like just as an example, is huge. So what if spring training, we have a big injury, knock on wood, and the pulse is a little bit, low at the moment, and fans are maybe a little bit distracted by March Madness or something.
Mhm.
We can't just go, oh, sorry, like the fans aren't as excited right now. We can't message opening day. Like you still have to come up with those creative and engaging ways to keep people, kind of in the loop on those things. So I don't really have, I guess, a great answer for it other than you do try to make the most out of it when things are going good, and when things aren't going as good, you just have to get more creative and maybe a little bit more out there with how you reach them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely want to dive more into that in a moment when we talk about the postseason run that you guys are coming off of. But I also just want to take a step back from a macro level and just talk about what you've seen through your 10 plus years, or going to 11 seasons now with the D-backs, around just the brand. Like, where does the brand fit in for the D-backs? Where does brand, voice, personality, these soft terms, but are very important to the copy you guys use, the creative you guys use, the how you guys go out and approaching these platforms, where you want to be, how you want to speak with fans, how you want to engage with fans. How established was that early on, and how has it evolved over your time, and what variables and factors affect that? Like, obviously there are trends of like, oh, obviously now, like at some point sarcasm's in, or now savagery's in, and now this is in. Like, how do you guys approach that, and also like what do you guys want to be as a brand?
So I think the number one most important thing for us is the Arizona Diamondbacks are a family-friendly organization, and the ballpark is as such, and that's who we are. Like we care about the community, we care about our fans, we care about treating people the right way, and that has to come through on social media. So we have to be, responding to people, answering questions, liking their photo, commenting. I mean, that starts from the very like roots of it all. Like that is who we are at the ballpark, where people can ask questions and be greeted with a friendly face. That has to extend through everything that we do. So we're never probably going to be that super snarky, edgy account, because it doesn't represent who the Arizona Diamondbacks are as a whole in the marketplace. And nor does it probably represent who we are as people that are behind the account, because I think it'd be really hard for myself, for example, to have the voice that maybe like I know some of the extreme examples were like the Windies or the Vegas Golden Knights or the LA Kings. Like that's just not who I am either, right? Like I don't think I could do that if I tried to emulate some of these trendy types of things or certain types of voices. It it wouldn't feel authentic, and I think people will be able to tell. Now, it doesn't mean that the Arizona Diamondbacks are also just my voice, because it absolutely is not that. When I
Right.
got hired on as an intern, my predecessor John Pruitt had a very specific voice that I had to learn, and it wasn't his voice either. It was the Arizona Diamondbacks voice that he had kind of tweaked, and it's continually being tweaked.
Mhm.
And when we hire new people, we have a coordinator come in or an intern even, like there is a gradual learning process of kind of trial and error of, yep, that does sound like us, or might have to peel that back a little bit, or maybe sound a little more excited for this play or this sort of moment. I would say it's really critical for us to just still, I think, sound professional. I think that we're not someone that's going to have a bunch of like typos and grammatical mistakes, and so casual that we might be alienating certain fans. We also might, I understand that that might also appeal to certain demographics, but I think we've just decided that like we're going to still have proper grammar. We're still going to
Yeah.
try to use, complete sentences when possible. But where it's changed, to kind of answer that part of the question, is I think it's constantly trying to evolve to meet both the platform's audience as well as kind of our fan base. Like,
Mhm.
certain types of references, like myself and our old coordinator, who's now at John Boy Media, she's awesome. Big Drake fans. So like that was authentic to us, but then we also recognized that on Twitter and Instagram, a Drake lyric might have hit a few years ago, and it wasn't going to work on Facebook. So we didn't just put Drake quotes up on, or Drake lyrics up on Facebook because we wanted to. We had to kind of tailor it to the platform as well. So I think for us, it's trying to split up and identify what works on individual platforms and what is something that for all of us can we kind of consistently represent, and then still have some fun. I mean, we definitely take I would call calculated risks from time to time. And there have been a lot over the years that I'll either reach out to approval or bounce off of my like, counterparts, or my trusted group of people that I really value their opinions around the organization and things like that, or my bosses, whoever it is, kind of go, hey, what do you think? Does this sound like us? Does this make sense? And sometimes we get the sign off and it goes great. I mean, we definitely had a little bit of fun in the postseason with, some of our videos being on the edgier side with,
Yeah.
we kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like a clapback, but had a little bit of a back and forth with the Dodgers. That is now our like best tweet ever.
Mhm.
But that was those were risks that for us, we weren't sure if it quite fit. And we've definitely had some over the years that didn't hit, and didn't get received as well and didn't quite fit who we are. Because yeah, we're never going to be the super over the top, kind of out there account.
And does that kind of like you understand that like there's a calculus to those risks and those can help. There's you guys talk about like the Drake lyrics that not everyone's gonna get that sometimes. I mean I certainly would not recognize a lot of lyrics. I don't recognize some of these Taylor Swift lyrics oftentimes as well when people are throwing them out there. But like do you kind of have to have like our best performance looks like our viral post on Instagram, on Twitter, wherever it is, looks like this? Like, do you know what the pinnacle of a D-back social media post looks like besides one that's performance based or whatever? Like, is there a a soft demand from your higher ups or internally, or even just your own stress or not stress, but your own expectations of like, hey, we need to cut through and break the noise and go viral, as much as we can, or at least once every so often. And while it might deviate from like this approachable, friendly brand that we want to represent, there are calculated times to go outside those boxes because that's how you break the noise or capture new fans or make a statement even about your brand in general.
To be honest with you, I don't really feel like I think I'm fortunate for this that there are those expectations that we have to do, anything quite like that. I think if you try to, it's not going to work, in my humble opinion. The most viral or successful posts were ones that we had zero expectation that they would be. And then the ones that we thought that we like, oh wow, like this is it. Like we cooked on this one, if you want to borrow a social media expression, like it doesn't really resonate the way that we thought it did. So I've never really tried to take the approach of trying to make things go viral, or trying to come across or take like a risk just for the sake of it. Which maybe that's being, speaking fortunately from our position, or maybe it might not be the right strategy. But I think for us, it's always worked when we just try to do things for the right reasons, and had some fun and just had fun. Like I think at the end of the day too, people take their jobs probably in general, but I think especially in social media, people can take it maybe a little too seriously from my perspective. Like at the end of the day, this job should be really fun and that you can do some kind of silly and goofy things.
Oh yeah.
And I think if it was like something that just felt right for us at the moment, without the goal of like, oh wow, yeah, if we post like we did a Taylor Swift post a few years ago and it actually did work well, but
Mm.
it worked because we were authentic Taylor Swift fans that were excited about a moment and it was in the middle of a post-COVID off season where we were talking about nothing else. Like we had zero other things to talk about. So why not just do something fun because we enjoy it? And sure enough, like that ended up doing really, really well for us. But you can't ever predict those sorts of things. And I think the more that you can just be authentic to the brand and to who you are, the people behind the keyboards, the team behind, the content, I think that'll shine. And I think that was what our success in the postseason with some of our videos that were definitely more out there in terms of what we had put out in the past. They were a lot more aggressive, but it was authentic to us and the team. It was how the players were feeling. It was how the coaches were feeling. Like they felt like, hey, we're kind of being slighted here. People are underestimating us.
Yeah.
And so the videos weren't us creating some imaginary storyline that didn't exist that we just thought would be funny. It was stuff that was like actually being said, and it was hopefully portraying how our fan base felt, how our players felt, how our coaches felt, how our whole front office felt. And I think that was why they ended up working.
Yeah, no, there's so many things, directions I want to go here with you, Kyle. I'm trying to figure out where I want to go next, but let's go and double click on that real quick around because I love the idea of really conveying a tone, a voice, a personality, a brand through video. Because I think oftentimes, at least in the past, and maybe it's going away a little bit more these days in the X era of Twitter, of Elon and all that, is that we oftentimes just reduce voice to your tweet copy, and that's how you establish personality. That's how you establish voice. It's just how do you tweet? And there's still a lot of that. But I think that the ability to convey personality through video, and I love the example you gave and the way you talk about it. So of really conveying that through video, through content, and not just a savage tweet or a snarky tweet. So when it comes to saying, okay, we're gonna use video, we're gonna use this medium to convey a storyline, a personality, and we want that to go to shine through to our fans. How does that come together? Like, because you guys are working with the video production team, you're working in collaboration of like, here's kind of the feel we're going for, and then they might show you like give you some ideas. Like, how does it come together so that it's not just a sick hype video like any other hype video you might see through it before any game, but it's a hype video with I don't want to say an agenda, but with some a little more oomph to it because it has a purpose.
Yeah, with a purpose is exactly how I would say it. And we're really fortunate. So our video production team sits within the same department that we do. And we've got three amazing full-time video producers, plus now we have a fourth who contributes with a lot of motion graphics and stuff as well. So I want to make sure that they get a lot of, shine for all this because a lot of it stemmed from them. We have Steve Rodak, Brandon Stillwell, Brandon Thomas, Jeff Parsons, who are all creating this incredible content on a day-to-day basis. And because we sit so close together, we're really fortunate to have developed a strong working relationship where it's give and take, and they're contributing ideas for us, we're contributing ideas for them. And so that's how those videos for us, I think, all kind of started. Like, it wasn't necessarily like we sat down one day and went like, we need to like create a video with this kind of thing. It was just as we're talking about projects over the course of a season, as the personalities for each of them shine through on different things, trying to kind of just highlight that and play into it and not kind of run away from it or not try to sterilize the content that we're doing. And I think it's the same approach that we have with the graphic designers. Like, play up to, like, they've got some great ideas and some great creativity that sometimes, because they have to just create other things that are a little bit more templated or branded, it's like, okay, like you have a platform here that we're going to give you for social media, for Instagram. Like, they're all on Instagram. All of our designers are. You know what works well. You know what you like to see. Like, go create something like that. And like, maybe here's for example, like we're re-signing Lurski Gurriel. He's got a very strong personality that any D-backs fan knows. His purple hair, the Pina power. He's got an identifiable personality that fans identify with. And they relate to. So it was like, well, we could create the same graphic, the welcome to Arizona or welcome back. You add the little, arrow, just kind of, okay, welcome back, which that's great. And it's fine. And it's not, we do that stuff too. Like, it's not like there's not a time and a place for it. But it was like with this guy, there was a little bit more of an opportunity to have some fun And so we kind of pushed a little bit back and forth of going, okay, well, what is true to him? And how do we come through with something that when we post about it, it feels like you immediately know, yep, that's Guriel and that's our designers,
Yeah.
taking a chance and putting something out there that is different and hopefully speaks to our fan base and gets them excited. So it's the same thing with video where it's like, all right, like we're getting ready for game 1 against the Dodgers. Like there's like a rivalry there. Like it's a little bit, there's that big brother, little brother syndrome that people like to talk about or whatever you call it. Whether or not that's true, I don't personally agree with it, but like let's talk about it. Let's have those conversations. And then I think naturally your content kind of shines through with that. And like our voice in terms of copy will be impacted by those conversations that we're having. The videos will come through with maybe a little bit more of that edge or that kind of back and forth, the suspense, we acknowledged that there had been disappointments in the past in LA leading into that series. Like we didn't run from the history, but then we had that history kind of helping us guide how we were going to continue creating stuff throughout that series. And then it paid off, and you have a chance to sweep your division rival. Like, yeah, like lean into as much as possible. Like our fan base would have eaten that stuff up for
Oh
the
yeah.
next. And they should. So it's like, why do anything but like, give the fans exactly what they want and have some fun with it. It's not to get, to be classless. It's not to be, rubbing in anyone's face, but while we're celebrating, like we should be part of that. And our videos should come through, our graphics should come through. And I think they did a good job of throughout the whole postseason, throughout the whole season, really, of trying to get that personality to shine through our content.
Yeah, and I think to your point there, as you've been stating, like the fact that you guys do communicate so much and are collaborative, that you can kind of like everyone kind of knows the vibes, and just it's this unspoken like aura of like, yeah, we all kind of recognize the vibes, and so like everything's gonna go in that direction. We're all swimming in the same direction or rowing, whatever analogy you want to use. My analogies are off today. It makes sense in that case. When you guys are trying to look for opportunities to indulge the fan base, whether it's like leaning into a player's personality or leaning into a nickname or a call or a whatever it might be, or not a hashtag, but a vibe. Like, do you tend to follow the course of the fans and like a proactive listening? Hey, fans seem to be really enjoying this or liking this, or are there other times where it's a little more other way around of like, hey, our this has really been popping off in the game presentation. Let's see if we can take that to social and try to more the other way around of like not incepting the fans, but driving it, being more the driver as opposed to the receiver of things.
It's both. It has to be, right? Like I think any good social person is constantly keeping their eye out for opportunities that they see around the ballpark, and emails, on the website. Like you constantly have to be open to going, oh wow, that's actually really cool. How could we utilize that? And I mean, there's countless times where it's already been created or it's already being utilized in some fashion. We're like, just yeah, we want that. Like, give that to us. And that was a big part of honestly the transition when video first came under social media is they were creating a bunch of stuff already. We just weren't seeing it. We weren't necessarily like they weren't thinking about it for social media. And we kind of had to like take some time to beat into that kind of routine of, oh yeah, like when you create something, like let's send it to social and let's see if they want it. Because we also might, yeah, it's our job to figure out what works on social media. It's not theirs. Like they shouldn't be able to read our minds and go, oh, of course, like yeah, that absolutely would work on social media. Or if I just edit it this way, then that would absolutely go well, do well. That's
Yeah.
our job to be able to take that and see it and go, okay, like hey, with some tweaks here, this could work really, really well. Or we love the design that's on the player cases around Chase Field. Like, how can we utilize those on social media? And maybe we take some of the stuff off of it so you don't need it to look like X, but you've already created this incredible thing. Like, let's showcase it. But then, yeah, absolutely. I think I'm a big believer in almost like micro analytics, if you will, of just I'm sure you like on social media, like if something's doing well, like you just see it doing well, like you can feel it in real time. You don't necessarily need to like look at a report 2 weeks later and go, oh wow, that did really well. Like you can tell when it's happening, like wow, I just got 100 retweets in a minute. Like our stuff doesn't usually do that.
Right.
Like this is doing really well. Like maybe we should like take note of that. I feel like you have to have your ear to the ground constantly, and I mean, especially when I was first starting. I would watch all of our posts like in real time, how they performed. Like, how did they track? Like, I was refreshing it probably to an unhealthy degree because I really wanted to learn and see how things were being received. What were the comments like? And if something immediately wasn't received well, maybe I hadn't posted something similar or the same piece of content on another platform, and I would want to change it before I got to that point. Um, because of just already the quick 5-10 minute feedback we had gotten on something. I think I've tried to peel that back a little bit as I've gotten further into my career and not be so reactive, and kind of almost temperamental, if you will. But yeah, I think it has to be a good combination of both of pushing and telling, and then just kind of trying to be open-minded. Whoever, you don't know who you can get ideas from. My dad's giving me ideas for social media posts, my girlfriend, like it does, anyone can have ideas here and there. You just have to be open to kind of hearing them.
Yeah, I think this is really well put. A couple minutes left here with Kyle Payne, senior manager, social media and content for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Kyle, there's so many more things I got to talk to you about. We'll try to squeeze some stuff in before we get to the terrible stat. And I want to touch on the idea of using those insights and the fact that you guys do sit in comms and so may not be sitting under marketing and thinking about marketing 24/7. I mean, certainly, obviously, a part of what you guys do, of course, just like everything's marketing in some cases. But like, how do you make sure that there is that inner exchange of insights and ideas of like, hey, this is really working well on our social. Like, let's make sure that we use this in our paid social or our traditional marketing or our radio ads. Like, where does paid social, where does marketing in general fit in with your team, and how do you guys communicate insights back and forth if you even do it, if it's necessary?
Yeah, we actually just came. It's really funny you mentioned this. Like my meeting that I came from just now was essentially to kind of do all those things and to collaborate and identify. And we have a pretty mostly new group of marketing people. There's definitely a couple people that have been there even longer than I have, but we also have a group of new people. And so it's been really fun over the last year or two since this kind of new group has come together, to be able to share those ideas and to see them, pick out things that they see us do on social media and go, "Ooh, we actually really want that for a TV, advertisement." That's new for me, really, and I think it's really exciting and fun. And I feel like that's an area I still want to really learn and grow in, because it isn't because I've sat in communications. It's definitely come from more of just like a branding and team side of things. We definitely work with and support marketing, and they provide us a lot of information. But because I've sat in one area, not the other, there's definitely this area still that I want to continue to learn and grow and explore and figure out how can we help. Paid social sits in marketing, but they've been great about like trying to pick our brains about, okay, hey, like what's working right now, and should we put money behind this as a boost, or can we repurpose this content for a separate social post? Or I'll ask like, what are your plans for paid social, and do we want to switch up what we post organically? Like, do we want it to go together, or do you guys want to hit different things? Because especially over the course of a baseball season, you might have one weekend that has five different things going on because it's a huge weekend that everyone wants to celebrate at the ballpark. So you might have a giveaway, you might have a group being recognized, you might have a community activation. And so I think continuing to work with them closely on how do we almost share the responsibility of promoting all those things,
Right.
really working hand in hand. It's something that's, I think, still newer for us, but it's been really exciting and fun just over the last year, even of kind of what it looks like when these areas are really working in lockstep with each other.
Oh yeah, no, that sounds phenomenal, man. It's really cool to hear that insight too. One last thing before this triple set, I promise we will get there. I'm just trying to pick about what I want to go through and what I want to leave out because there's just so much stuff we can talk about. I guess
Yeah, and you know me, I'll just keep talking, so you got
you
to
and me
stop me at
both,
some
man.
point.
You and me both. When we're talking baseball and social, just like hook me up to a chair and leave me here all day. But I guess let's touch on the nature of the long season of ML of Major League Baseball. I mean, it's like you talk to your counterparts, I'm sure in other sports, it's like, oh, yeah, it's 82 games is a lot, or 17 games. You're like, oh, yeah, try 162, buddy. No way. So like, I mean, I'm sure it's very easy to get in the monotony of it's another game day. We got BP. Then we're gonna post the start. We're gonna post the starting lineup. We're gonna do a little bit of play-by-play, but not much. Then we'll post the final score, and then it's the next day. Maybe there's a bobblehead giveaway. Like especially when you get into more of the spotlight in the postseason when the team is playing really well. Is there like an intentionality with like, hey, we have to try to make these games feel different, more elevated. Like let's get out of the routine. Like is that just the nature of it? Sometimes you're gonna just have a routine, and that's okay. Or are you really at this point trying to make every game feel special? Is that just not even possible?
It's definitely not possible because especially I think I tried to count recently and I'm sure I've at least watched, if not covered, at least 1,000 games at this point, but probably more than that.
Wow.
Probably a lot more than that. There's no way that, yeah, you can make every game feel special. And the thing about baseball, right, is even the best teams are going to lose, a third of the time or something along those lines. So yeah, there's certain nights where you just don't force it. And I think that's a key part of it. That's something I think I've learned from my time here with the Diamondbacks was I used to try to force and I feel like I had to post something every single day, or especially on certain platforms that you post more frequently, like Twitter or X now. You'd feel like, oh, I have to post from BP today. I have to post a pregame stat. I have to post X. Y and Z, not, and I've tried to get away from that. It's almost, I feel like can feel like for social media people justifying your job, like by posting, like if you don't post something, then it's like, what are you doing? But that's obviously not the case, but it can feel like that self-pressure of that.
Totally.
So I don't think that we necessarily try to make every game feel special. I know it used to be a lot more popular on social media to try to do like themed nights on,
Right.
like, oh, we're gonna do meme night and we're gonna do Star Wars night and
Or
everything
tweets
has to be
or these
themed.
Taylor Swift lyrics or whatever.
Exactly. And we used to do that to try to keep things fun, interesting. And occasionally there can be my big wild idea though that I still haven't gotten approved. I'll share this with you is I want to do like brunch baseball that's sponsored by like an alcohol partner, like a vodka or something. And the social media team gets progressively more drunk off like mimosas or Bloody Marys. That's my big themed idea. And I think there's like a huge like opportunity there,
Oh
but
yeah.
might not be the best. I don't know if HR would approve that. But anyway, to get back to your question and the conversation about a long season, I think it is nice for me at least. I'm someone that likes a routine, but I like having the freedom within that routine. Like we know there's going to be a game. We know that there's kind of a certain rhythm that comes through a baseball season with a homestand and then a road trip and then a homestand and then a road trip and a day game into a night game, whatever it is. I like that there's that rhythm and that flow of it all. Whereas, other sports, I don't know if I would feel like I'd be able to get into that as much.
Right.
But I like that within that, there's a lot of freedom and flexibility. You have different people at the ballpark every single night, and there's different things that happen on any given day. Players do crazy. I mean, baseball is such a cool sport for that. You never know what you're going to see at the ballpark. I
Right.
mean, we got to cover Tyler Gilbert, a guy making his first MLB start who had been like a minor league Rule 5 pick, throw a no-hitter. Like you don't ever know what you're going to expect. And I love that's part of what makes I think baseball so special is yes, there's this grind and this monotony in a sense. But within all of those little moments, there's just so many fun, exciting little things that you can
Totally.
capture and share. And I think for us, we just try to get back to like, don't force it. Don't necessarily post just for the sake of posting. But I'm big on just when something presents itself, you got to capitalize. You got to get hard, hit it hard. I mean, that's I think where most of our successes come from over the years is just kind of taking something that is maybe a small opportunity and just trying to make the most of it.
Does that elevate at all, like in the World Series, or when you're going down the stretch of the postseason, of like, okay, this is what we do on a normal game day, or like the options, but this is how we do BP on a World Series game day.
Yeah, essentially what I felt like in the postseason is we took what we would do over the course of like a month and would try to do that every day. Like we might do a certain type of video once a month, essentially, to try to keep things fresh. And it was like every single day we're trying to do that type of video. We would try to share those kinds of photos. We would try to share those every single game. Because for us, we had no idea. I mean, we got in on the last weekend. I think we were technically the last team to even like clinch a playoff spot. So we didn't even know if we were going to get there. And then when we got there, we didn't know how long it was going to last. So like when we went to Milwaukee, game one of Milwaukee, we couldn't hold anything back. We couldn't be like, well, if we get to the next round, then
Right.
we can really break, or like, then if we get to the NLCS, we didn't know, when we win a game, when we win a series, we couldn't assume any of that. So we kind of just were like every single day, let's just try to do the absolute best that we can highlighting today. And if we run out of ideas down the road, then we'll worry about that at that
Right.
point. And to be perfectly honest with you, by the time we got to the World Series, it was like, how do we cover BP now? We've done like 7, 10, 12. We had done 12 games already with like the same kind of routine plus
Right.
workout days. So I think by the time the World Series got around, we then just were like, we're in the freaking World Series. Like, we don't need to get that. Like, hey, here's a World Series logo, and fans.
Right.
It's like there's like a Family Guy meme about like just like people freaking out about like the simplest thing. And so I think for us, we got to kind of back to our basics a little bit by that time. But in the postseason, it was just like go all in all the time, and we'll rest when the season's over.
Oh yeah, I mean, basically, you're living every day like it's your last day because it could be sometimes with those elimination days. That's a
Yeah,
nice.
sleep when you're dead, right?
Well, Kyle, a lot of fun. We're having some more fun with you in our nine pitch inning coming up. But first episode, shareable stat coming at you right now. Really enjoyed that chat with Kyle Payne, senior manager of social media and content for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Seriously, could have just kept him all day, all the way up to opening day. But we will have some more fun with Kyle coming up with our quick hitting questions, so stick around for that. But first, this episode's shareable stat. This episode's shareable stat comes from the fairly recent document put together by the CEO of YouTube. It was basically a letter to the YouTube shareholders and Google shareholders about the year past and the year ahead. And the shareable stat from that CEO letter was 400%. That is the number of top creators that received the majority of their watch time on the big screen increased more than 400% year over year. So that is a pretty compelling stat, meaning that a lot more creators are seeing their content viewed on the quote-unquote big screen. The TV sets, not so much the laptops or the mobile devices or the iPads, but the big set. What does that mean for you? It could mean a lot of things. Certainly, I think everyone is eyeing YouTube as a platform to prioritize this year, whether that's doing more with shorts. There's a lot of good stats on the growth of shorts, which continues just to grow tremendously year over year. But also doing more with community. We've seen some accounts do a lot more posting on community. But what does it mean? The fact that more and more users are now watching on their TV sets. Certainly we've seen more long-form content do well in there, especially some of the evergreen content that is relatively timeless, that can still be getting lots of views months, even years down the road, and that can be monetized, whether through sponsorship or through just the YouTube partner program and running ads on that content. We've seen others start to license content out to creators who basically make their living off of putting together content from sports highlights, from other licensed content that they get their hands on. It could mean thinking about what kind of content is more of a lean back experience, something that someone might put on when they're just kind of lounging at the end of the night, or even during their workday when they're taking their lunch break, or just kicking back and doing some mindless work. What can they put on from your YouTube channel? Could it be historical content, old highlights? Could you have a game show or a reality type show that is built for your fans? What kind of content can really replace the kind of casual viewing that TV sets have been known for in the past? Yes, there's still that lean forward content, that all access, hard knocks style stuff. There's highlight packages. There's best of compilations that are getting easier and easier now to produce at scale through generative AI platforms. But a really compelling thing to think about, to talk about, to ponder, as again that shareable stat from the YouTube CEO's letter, the number of top creators that received the majority of their watch time on the big screen increased more than 400% year over year. Something to think about for sure, but more importantly, stick around because here he is in the nine pitch inning, our quick hitting question segment, more with Kyle Payne of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Right back from this episode of Shareable Stat, and I'm joined once again by Kyle Payne. He is senior manager of social media and content for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Is it okay to say D-backs? Is that proper? Do you guys say D-backs, or is that frowned upon?
It's okay, but we are now kind of back more to embracing Diamondbacks in its full glory. With our new uniforms, we've removed the D-backs and put Diamondbacks back on our chest.
Gotcha.
So either's okay now. Actually, again, you hit on whatever meeting I had right before this was perfect because that was another topic that came up, and you are good to go with whatever your heart's content. I'm getting ahead of the gun, but because all of our social accounts are still at D-backs, I feel like we have to keep the D-backs in the style guide.
No, it's super interesting, actually. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but that's a really interesting thing to open up with. That's not even our first question. Our first question for the nine pitch inning, which is up right now, and this is going to be an interesting one. You guys are one of the handful of clubs that transitioned away from Bally Sports, the RSN, the Regional Sports Network, to these MLB broadcasts. So I guess in general, what was that like? What's different, if anything at all? Or does it seem like it's just exactly the same except there's no Bally Sports logo?
Huge difference for us, and it was, I mean, crazy learning experience. There's only one team that had gone before us, the Padres, so they were kind enough to help us out and kind of get used to that transition. I mean, the first thing really is you can't talk about it without acknowledging all the great people that we worked with over at Valley Sports Arizona that were a huge part of what we did. I mean, they were such a big partner for us, and we had some really, really great people that we worked with there. So I just couldn't talk about this without acknowledging, that group. I would say the biggest difference for us, honestly, is we didn't always realize, especially I think external of social media team, like how much their social accounts did for telling the story of the game.
Right.
We wanted to be a little bit more selective, maybe with some of the highlights that we'd share. So a sacrifice fly might not make our cut of highlights to post, but because of how their approach was, well, you could always rely on them to kind of to support and supplement
Right.
our coverage. So that was a major change for us. We had to talk about, like, do we have to increase our posts? Like, are there other types of things that we have to post?
Mhm.
Because they're no longer doing it, that we used to be able to rely on them and either us sharing it or just hoping that our fans that care enough about those moments are going to be following our TV partner as well. So that was the biggest difference. And then I would say the other one, and we're still having these conversations, of course, is network TV or cable TV or RSN, however you call it, is where a lot of long form content lives. We would do shows every year with them where we would have a player talk with our broadcaster and do a show like that. So that's no longer a thing. So we got to figure out for ourselves, like, do we produce those? If so, where do they live? Is it purely social now? It's a lot of interesting questions that we're still trying to navigate through, and it'll be really interesting to see how it shakes out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I know that's really fascinating. Thanks for sharing all that. All right, number two for you, Kyle. Tell me your favorite player or players, if you had to shout out more than one, to work with for content and why.
It's so hard. And I feel like I don't know. I don't like to play favorites or anything like that. But the one I want to give a shout out to, because it's also just very top of mind, is Geraldo Perdomo, infielder for us, 2023 All-Star, which is I think one of the coolest stories. And the reason it's so special is back when I was first starting out, I think it was only my second or third season. After the year, I went down to the Dominican Republic, which is where all 30 teams have an academy, and I wanted to do some social and digital content to kind of showcase what's going on down there. And I got to meet him when he was a 16-year-old, and so to
Wow.
see him kind of come up, and he has just one of like the most warm hearts. He's my girlfriend's grandma's favorite player, so I'm sure she'll love the shout out. And he like signed a bat for her and took photos.
Wow.
And so I mean, we have a lot of great players on the team right now. So it sucks not being able to call them all out. And we've had some great ones over the years, but he's definitely someone that has a special place. And he just hosted our content team in the DR this last week.
Wow.
So there's some great stuff, hopefully already on our social media. You'll see in the by the time this is posted. So yeah, he's a special one.
That's awesome. That's really cool. You kind of have grown up with him there. That's awesome to think about. Number three for you, Kyle. Tell me the most viral social post from your time there with the D-backs.
The most viral, because it just happened, it just gone viral again, is what we call date night. And it was when a guy was asking for updates on his roommate's date. It was, I think, a second date.
Right.
And it was honestly, this is a lot longer of a story, but I'll keep this version short. It was something that we were truly just bored. It was in the midst of a tough season for us. And we even tried to pass it off initially to like someone else, but we were so intrigued ourselves that we just kind of started interacting with him, and it got crazier and reached more people than we ever would have expected. And it just actually was making the rounds again on Instagram and TikTok. So I have people sending it like, did you do this? Like, because they don't know how long in this I've been with the Diamondbacks, especially a lot of my newer friends. So that date night is what we call it, and that one I think still takes the cake.
That it was so memorable. It's just like one of those like only with social media things. That's just such an incredible story. Number four, if you got tell me your number one epiphany or insight or key learning in your career so far about just social media and sports in general. Like what's something that's kind of stuck with you as like an epiphany?
It's really freaking cool. Like, don't take it for granted. I think people can get too serious about it or some anything along those lines. Like, it's just so freaking cool. Like, however long it lasts, however long you get to do it for, like it's such a truly once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm really grateful for every day that I've gotten to do it, because I know a lot of people would dream of getting to be in this kind of role. And there's a lot of, I'm sure, little work things, but that's the one that just comes to mind for me right now.
Hey, I like that. That's a feel good one. I like that one for sure. That's inspiring. Number five, tell me like, what do you do to get content ideas? Like are you scrolling every day? Are there other things that you're doing? Are you using crowd tangle? Like, what do you do to sort of keep up with what's working out there?
I'm big on diversifying as much as possible. So like I love food, I love music, I love like European soccer. Like I just try to consume stuff that's not necessarily in the same area. And I feel like you can just get so much so many ideas from other areas and figure out ways to implement it with what you're doing. So like Chef's Table used to be a huge source of inspiration for me, a series on Netflix about like fine dining chefs. I've developed some really cool relationships with some people in the music industry, and they're doing dope stuff. Yeah, I just feel like it's and like I love listening to music, going to concerts, all those sorts of things. I feel like just any source of creativity will kind of inspire you.
I like that a lot. Like it's one thing to just be stuck in a sports bubble, but to be able to experience things in general and also to see what other brands are doing outside the sports space, that's how you get the best ideas. That's awesome. Number six, tell me your favorite athlete growing up. And a little bonus question: do you have any memory of the 2001 World Series?
So my favorite athlete growing up is Ryan Christensen, who was a 4A outfielder. He played for the Oakland A's, which was my favorite team growing up. And quick funny story was I actually got to meet him thanks to our former manager. Ryan Christensen was a bench coach under Bob Melvin, but before that he was a coach in the A's system. And our former manager Chip Hale went to work for the A's. I went over and said hi to him before one of our spring training games. Saw that Ryan Christensen was there, and I told him that he was my favorite player. And he's like, "Are you serious? Who is this guy? Like, how do you even know who he is?" Calls him over and I got to meet him and I told my parents that story and they both cried. So that's my favorite. That was my favorite player growing up. I loosely remember the '01 World Series. I was like 8 years old. But I do remember being very happy because my family was not like, let's just say the biggest fans of the Yankees. So we were big Diamondbacks fans that week.
Did you kind of have to like? Is it good or not as good to just know every ounce of history of the team? Is it good to have like a little bit of an outsider perspective, or like do you want at least someone on your social media team to like to know every nook and cranny of the history?
Um, I oof. I'm gonna say that it's probably not. I think it'd be better to have that passion and history of the team. I just think that that gives you such a unique perspective and can relate with most of the audience. However, I think anyone, if they try hard enough, can really delve into the history of a team and learn it and embrace it. But I would imagine it would have been a lot easier if like we've had some people come through the organization that are like born raised D-backs fans, and you
Right.
can just tell like how quickly, and they'll know like what a certain player meant to the fan base that you maybe wouldn't have just based on stats. So I think it'd been easier to be like a lifelong D-backs fan for sure.
Hey, what's crazy thing about it is that like those first generation Diamondbacks fans are now parents for the first. Like, it's not that old of a team still, which is a wild thing.
No, it's crazy.
I never said before. I'm gonna go back in your memory bank to tell me your most memorable game from your time at Arizona State.
I think it was when we played Missouri my freshman year. It was a football game, and there was a monsoon. It went to overtime. That one, my friends and I still reminisce about. Also, when we played Notre Dame because I fractured my foot that day. So those are the two that come to mind.
Oh, that's fun stuff. All right, I'm gonna go ahead to this next question because this next question I'm really excited about. First, it's our food question. We always gotta ask a food question. Tell me first the best meal to get in Phoenix and where to get it, or the greater Phoenix area. And the bonus part of this question, because the Diamondbacks have had some wild concessions items over the years, tell me the concessions item all time or current that we need to try at Diamondbacks games. What's like that one six out of your mind? So best meal in Phoenix, where to get it, and also the concessions item.
Best meal in Phoenix is so hard because I could give you so many answers depending on the time of day, cuisine. But I'm going to give you my girlfriend and I's favorite restaurant that's right down the street from where we live. It's called the Macintosh. She just texted me trying to see if I could go after work to meet up with her and her friend there. So that's the Macintosh. Their roti and rib combo is pretty amazing, and my girlfriend loves their Caesar. So shout out to her and them. They do a great job over there, and we can walk there from our place. So that's probably the one that comes to mind. And then if you come to Chase Field, you have to try the churro dog. There's no other answer. That is what we're known for, and it's worth trying. Bring a friend, but it lives up to the hype, and it has to be the churro dog.
Amazing. If anyone listening is not familiar with the churro dog, Google it right now because it looks
Yeah,
delicious. And I'm
we
glad.
can't do it justice. You got to just look it up.
That's amazing. All right, last one for you here, Kyle. This might be a hard one. We're gonna go back into the history of the Diamondbacks here a little bit. Who is on the Arizona Diamondbacks Mount Rushmore? So that's four sculptures, four names. Who's on that Mount
Yep.
Rushmore?
So you have to start with Luis Gonzalez. He is Mr. Diamondback, legend of Arizona, one of the best guys you'll ever meet. He's truly a legend here, in the best way possible. So it has to start with Gonzo. It has to start with Randy Johnson.
Right.
I mean, Hall of Famer, no doubt. I think you have to put Paul Goldschmidt on there, another great guy, just absolutely, a gem of a person. And then I'm gonna put Torre Lavello on the Mount Rushmore, our current manager. Absolute amazing person. We are so lucky that we have him, and he's the winningest manager in our history. There's a lot of tough calls for that fourth one, but I would be remiss if I didn't give Torre a shout out because he truly does so much for us on and off the field. He's a great representative of the Arizona Diamondbacks.
That's a solid Mount Rushmore. I will not disagree with any of those there. All right, Kyle, you kicked ass your 9 pitch inning. You struck out the side, Randy Johnson style, Brandon Webb style. Name your pitcher. Your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform or platforms they're on, and why they're following.
I want to give a shout out to my former employee who's kicking ass at John Boy Media, Taylor Jackson, Twitter, Instagram, or X, whatever. She's all over it. And honestly, the whole team at John Boy, they're great people to work with. We've developed an awesome relationship with them. But Taylor started out as an intern for us. We hired her back to do social media, something she really hadn't done. She had been a photographer, and she's just so talented, so creative. We couldn't be more proud of the work that she's doing over at John Boy. She's going to be everyone's boss one day, like that type of person. So if you don't follow Taylor Jackson already, I believe she also has a podcast now with some of the people over at John Boy called The Girls. It was like, I think called The Girls Room. I don't know if it still is. They were rebranded, but go follow Taylor. She's awesome, and love everyone over at John Boy Media.
That is awesome. We will put her handles and podcasts in the show notes for sure. And how about you, Kyle? Where can we find you, as well as all things Diamondbacks across digital and social media?
You don't want to follow me. I'm boring on social media, which is ironic, I'm sure, but it's at Kyle Payne _28. It's mostly food and music. And it's some Arsenal. I'm a big Arsenal fan. And then please follow the D-backs, though, at D-backs across all platforms, Arizona Diamondbacks. You can find us. And then, we've got community handles, D-backs Give Back. Follow them as well. Chase Field, Guy Fieri's restaurant, downtown Phoenix, Los D-backs. We got them all. So thank you for following us and supporting what we do.
Hell yeah. Follow along. They're doing great stuff. The baseball season will be here before you know it, whether depending on when you're listening to this. And Kyle, cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast today, sharing your insight, your wisdom, and some fun D-backs things.
It was truly an honor, Neil. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Really appreciate this conversation.
So great being able to talk to Kyle Payne, Senior Manager of Social Media Content for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He and his team do just such a great job, and you can see why, being able to pick his brain today, get his insight. Kyle's been there for several years now and will continue to do great stuff as the 2024 MLB season is nearly underway, depending on when you're listening to this. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again to our guest, Kyle Payne. Thank you to you for listening. As always, you can find the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. You can find me, your host, Neil Horowitz, on Twitter, NJH287, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content. Everything can be found on the website, dsmsports.net, and make sure to subscribe, follow along, keep up, because a new episode of the Digital Social Media Sports Podcast will be coming out shortly. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.